if there was any validity to the fact that this was a flying saucer, and information got out that he wanted our people there in Roswell to have first crack at it.
Walter Hout was one of the last surviving first-hand witnesses to the Roswell incident, and before his death, he decided to leave behind the one story he had refused to tell for decades. He signed a sworn, notarized affidavit, ordered it sealed inside a vault, and gave strict instructions that it was not to be opened until after he was gone. When that document was finally unsealed, it revealed an account that directly challenged the official explanation the U.S. government had defended for decades. The vault that opened after the funeral. Walter Hout was not a conspiracy theorist. He was not a UFO enthusiast or a man looking for attention. He was a first lieutenant in the United States Army Air Forces, stationed at Roswell Army Airfield in the summer of 1947, serving as the public information officer for the 509th Bomb Group. That unit was the only military formation on the planet capable of delivering nuclear weapons at the time. Haut was the man who, on July 8th of that year, typed and distributed a press release that told the world the military had recovered a flying disc from a ranch near Roswell. He is the reason any of us have ever heard the name Roswell. He created the single most famous document in the history of unidentified aerial phenomena. And then, within hours, he watched his own words get buried. For the next 5 decades, Haut maintained the same careful public position. He said he believed the crash involved something extraordinary, but he insisted he had no personal, first-hand knowledge of what was actually recovered. That was the wall he built between himself and the truth. Nobody knew why until he was gone. In 2002, 3 years before his death, Haut signed a sworn affidavit with researchers Thomas Carey and Donald Schmidt and instructed them to keep it sealed until after he died. In 2007, the affidavit was published in their book Witness to Roswell, and what it said demolished everything Haut had told the public for 58 years. He stated that his original press release about a recovered flying disc was accurate and that the retraction was a deliberate lie. He stated there were 2 crash sites, not one. He stated that Colonel William Blanchard, the base commander and his close personal friend, personally took him to Building 84, a hangar at Roswell Army Airfield, and showed him what had been recovered. He described a craft roughly 25 feet across. He described small bodies with heads that were too large for their frames, and he wrote in his own sworn words that he was convinced what he saw was some kind of craft and its crew from outer space.
An estimated 1 billion people watched Alien Autopsy Fact or Fiction, a documentary about the black and white video of the supposed dissection of one of the Roswell aliens.
His family explained the silence. Blanchard had made Haut swear a personal oath of secrecy, and Haut had treated that oath the way a soldier treats a direct order from a man he loved like a father. He would not break his word while he was alive, but he would not let the truth die with him either. That affidavit was his compromise between loyalty and conscience, and the fact that he chose a legal instrument, something enforceable, something that carries consequences for dishonesty, tells you that Haut understood exactly what he was doing and wanted the world to take it seriously. The man who typed the words "flying disc" in 1947 waited until he was safely in the ground before he told us what he actually saw inside that hangar, and that should disturb every single one of us. What MacBrazel found on the ranch. The whole thing started with a sheep rancher named W.W. MacBrazel, a foreman on the J.B. Foster Ranch, about 30 miles southeast of Corona, New Mexico. Brazel lived alone in a shack with no telephone, no electricity, and no running water. His nearest neighbor was 10 miles away. He was not a man who read science fiction novels or followed news about flying saucers. His concerns were fencing, livestock, and weather. Nothing in his entire biography suggests a person capable of fabricating or even embellishing a story for public attention. In late June or early July of 1947, following a night of violent thunderstorms and sounds Brazel described as distinctly different from thunder, he rode out to check his sheep and found something scattered across nearly 3/4 of a mile of open range land. Thin metallic foil that could not be torn, cut, or burned. Beams resembling lightweight wood, but impossibly rigid. covered in pink and purple symbols that matched no known writing system, a parchment material that refused to hold a crease. Brazel gathered fragments, showed them to neighbors, and eventually reported the find to County Sheriff George Wilcox. Wilcox did not call just any military base. He called Roswell Army Airfield, home of the 509th Bomb Group, the single most security-sensitive installation in the United States military. That base sat at the heart of America's nuclear capability. Every person stationed there held elevated clearance. Whatever landed on Brazel's ranch had fallen into the lap of the one place most likely to bury it completely. Colonel Blanchard dispatched Major Jesse Marcel, his intelligence officer, alongside Counterintelligence Corps Captain Sheridan Cavett, to accompany Brazel back to the ranch. Marcel later described spending hours surveying the debris field and stated that the material was unlike any wreckage from any aircraft, balloon, or weapon system he had encountered in his career. Marcel was a decorated veteran of World War II who had worked on the atomic bomb tests at Bikini Atoll. He held one of the highest security clearances in the military, and he could not identify what he was looking at. Mac Brazel made the discovery, but the United States Army decided what the world would be told about it, and the first version of that story lasted exactly 6 hours. The 6-hour truth. On the morning of July 8, 1947, Walter Hout distributed his press release under direct orders from Colonel Blanchard. The Roswell Daily Record ran it that afternoon with a headline that would become the most famous in UFO history. RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. Wire services picked it up. For 6 hours, the United States military officially told the world it had recovered a flying disc. Then General Roger Ramey at Fort Worth Army Airfield shut everything down. A weather forecaster named Irving Newton was brought in. Debris was displayed for photographers. The identification was changed to a weather balloon and its radar reflector. The retraction ran the next day. The public accepted it. The story evaporated from the news cycle almost overnight. But something happened to Mac Brazel that should trouble anyone paying attention. After being taken into military custody and held at the base for the better part of a week, Brazel emerged telling a completely different version of his own experience. Where he had previously described indestructible metallic material and strange symbols, he now told reporters the debris was rubber strips, tinfoil, and sticks. The Roswell Daily Record printed this new account on July 9th under a headline that tells you everything you need to know about what happened to him. Harassed rancher who located saucer, sorry he told about it. Local radio station KGFL had recorded an earlier interview with Brazel in which his account was dramatically different from the sanitized version he delivered after his time on the base. That recording was never aired. The station received a call from Washington telling them not to broadcast it. Brazel later told his neighbors he had taken an oath and could never discuss the matter again. His family testified that he came back from the base frightened, angry, and visibly changed. Shortly after, he acquired a new pickup truck and relocated to start a different life. Researchers have noted these details as consistent with either a bribe or compensation for his silence. A man went to the authorities because he thought he had found something unusual on his ranch, and he came back a week later unable to speak, unwilling to make eye contact with his neighbors, and bound by an oath he never asked to take. The intelligence officer who could not stay quiet.
This foil-like material that you could fold and fold and fold again, it would unfold on its own. Memory metal. Very thin, very lightweight. You couldn't cut it. The I-beams, the weight of balsa wood, but it wouldn't burn.
For 31 years after Roswell, nobody of any credibility challenged the weather balloon story. The incident was forgotten. It appeared in no major UFO book of the 1950s, 60s, or early 70s. It had been erased so completely from public consciousness that when nuclear physicist Stanton Friedman stumbled onto the trail in 1978, it was by pure accident. Friedman was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, waiting to appear on a local television program when someone mentioned that a retired intelligence officer named Jesse Marcel was living nearby and claimed to have handled the wreckage of a crashed flying saucer. Friedman was not a hobbyist. He had spent 14 years working on classified nuclear projects for General Electric, Westinghouse, and McDonnell Douglas. He held real clearances and understood how military secrecy actually worked. When he sat down with Marcel, what he heard changed the trajectory of his entire life. Marcel told Friedman the weather balloon story was a cover. He said the material he recovered from the Foster Ranch was not from this earth. He described it in precise terms. Metallic foil so thin you could crumple it in your hand and it would snap back to a perfectly flat sheet on its own. Small beams covered in symbols no linguist could interpret. Material that could not be scratched, bent permanently, or destroyed by fire. Marcel said he was amazed at what he saw and that the cover-up was deliberate, orchestrated, and complete. He said this knowing it could destroy his reputation. He said it because he was 70 years old and tired of carrying a lie that was never his to carry. Marcel died in 1986. His family later revealed he had kept a journal during the period of the crash, written in what appeared to be a personal code.
Jesse Marcel Sr. kept a small Army portfolio of his military records, and in it, a small journal.
In 2020, the History Channel brought together cryptologists and former intelligence operatives to attempt to decipher it. Marcel's son, Jesse Jr., recalled his father spreading debris across the kitchen floor and telling the family plainly that it was a flying saucer. The younger Marcel committed the final years of his own life to confirming what his father always maintained. Stanton Friedman went on to spend 4 decades investigating Roswell, interviewing more than 600 witnesses, and lecturing in 19 countries. He described the cover-up as a cosmic Watergate. Until his sudden death at a Toronto airport in 2019, he never wavered. The debris was real, the cover-up was real, and the explanation that replaced the truth was designed to make the most extraordinary event in human history disappear. Friedman's investigation revealed something that multiplied the scale of the cover-up beyond anything the balloon story could account for, because the debris field on the Foster Ranch was not the only site. The bodies that nobody was supposed to see. Multiple witnesses, interviewed independently across different decades, described a second location where a largely intact object was found alongside occupants they believed were not human. Glenn Dennis was 22 years old in the summer of 1947, working as a mortician at Ballard's funeral home in Roswell, the primary civilian mortuary contractor for the Army airfield. Around the time of the incident, Dennis received unusual phone calls from the base mortuary officer asking about the availability of small, child-sized, hermetically sealed caskets. The officer also asked technical questions about how embalming chemicals would interact with bodies exposed to the elements for several days. Dennis later drove to the base infirmary, where he encountered an atmosphere of unusual tension before military police ordered him to leave. Dennis later claimed that a base nurse, whose identity he concealed by using a false name, privately described seeing 3 small bodies during an examination. According to his account, they were roughly 3 feet tall, with 4 fingers, no thumbs, and unusually large heads. Although the nurse story was later challenged after researchers discovered the false identity, Dennis's account of the casket inquiry received independent support from Sergeant Milton Sprouse, who recalled Dennis mentioning those calls years before Roswell became widely known. Walter Hout's sealed affidavit also described 2 recovery locations and what he believed were bodies near one of the crash sites. Brigadier General Arthur Exon later stated in interviews that unusual debris had been sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for examination. First Lieutenant Robert Shirkey, in his own sworn affidavit, said he watched debris being loaded onto a B-29 transport aircraft and recalled bodies being taken to Hangar 84. According to several witness accounts, the recovered material was transported to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, a facility long associated with highly classified military research. Senator Barry Goldwater later recalled asking Air Force Chief of Staff General Curtis LeMay for access to whatever was stored there. Goldwater said LeMay reacted angrily, refused the request, and warned him never to raise the subject again. Another detail has fueled debate for decades. During General Roger Ramey's July 8th press conference in Fort Worth, photographers accidentally captured a telegram he was holding. Years later, researchers attempted to enhance the image, arguing that one phrase appeared to read, "the victims of the wreck." That interpretation remains disputed because the text is blurred, but supporters argue the wording does not fit the official weather balloon explanation. Whether the enhancement is accurate or not, the photograph remains one of the most debated pieces of evidence in the Roswell case. What the government said and why none of it survived. The United States government has offered 3 official explanations for Roswell, and every one of them collapsed under its own weight. The first explanation lasted 6 hours. A flying disc, announced by the Army Air Force's own press release on July 8, 1947, before someone with enough authority decided the world was not ready and the story was pulled. The second explanation, a weather balloon and its radar reflector, held for 47 years until Friedman reopened the case and began producing witnesses who told a fundamentally different story. The third explanation arrived in 1994, when the Air Force published a report attributing the debris to Project Mogul, a classified program using high-altitude balloon arrays launched from Alamogordo to monitor Soviet nuclear tests.
Project Mogul would use some 50 large rubber balloons to carry listening devices, called transponders, into the higher atmosphere.
The Air Force identified New York University Flight Number 4, launched June 4, 1947, as the probable source, tracked flying toward Corona before its batteries failed. But Flight Number 4 has its own problems. The field diary of Dr. Albert Crary, a key Mogul scientist, reportedly contains a notation that no launch occurred on June 4th due to weather conditions. Project engineer Charles Moore later argued an early morning launch may have happened regardless, but the flight was never logged as recovered. It generated no recovery paperwork. The very balloon the Air Force used to replace the weather balloon story had its own gap in the record. In 1997, a second Air Force report attempted to explain the alien body testimony by suggesting witnesses had conflated their memories with sightings of anthropomorphic crash test dummies dropped during high-altitude military experiments. The problem is that those dummy drops did not begin until 1953, 6 years after the Roswell crash. The Air Force acknowledged this timeline discrepancy and attributed it to witnesses compressing or confusing their memories across decades. The General Accounting Office investigation of 1995, initiated by New Mexico Congressman Stephen Schiff, found that Roswell Army Airfield administrative records from 1945 through 1949 had been destroyed. Outgoing messages from the same period were also destroyed. The disposition form did not record who destroyed them, when, or why. Congressman Schiff called it a failure of the government. 3 explanations in 50 years, each delivered with total confidence, each quietly replaced. And underneath all 3, a paper trail that someone made sure would never be followed. What the silence actually costs. There is a weight to what these men carried. Brazel came back from the base and could not look his neighbors in the eye. Marcel held the truth inside for 31 years before a chance encounter with a physicist in Louisiana finally broke the seal. Haut built an entire museum around the event and still could not bring himself to say what he personally witnessed until he knew he would never have to face the consequences. Every single one of them chose the end of their life as the moment to speak. More than 600 witnesses across 7 decades told a story that the government has revised 3 times and never settled. Jesse Marcel said it plainly. It was not anything from this earth. It certainly was not anything built by us. There was a cover-up about this whole matter. He said that, knowing what it would cost him. He said it because, at the end of his life, the cost of silence had become heavier than the cost of truth. Whatever crashed in the New Mexico desert in the summer of 1947 left marks that 79 years of official denial have not been able to erase. The debris was real. The recovery was real. The silence was engineered. And somewhere in the architecture of classification that most of us will never see, the answer to what Mac Brazel actually found on his ranch is still sitting in a room that does not appear on any map, waiting for someone to decide that the rest of us are finally ready to know. What do you think really happened in that debris field in 1947, and who do you believe? The men who were there or the government that changed its story 3 times? Drop your answer in the comments below.